After completing my AFEC, my father, who had retired from the railway service a year earlier, used his long-standing connections to get me recruited into the railway department. After completing my training, I was appointed as a guard. My first duty assignment was on the Thal Express. This train ran from Multan through Muzaffargarh, Lair, Mianwali, and Rawalpindi. It was 5 p.m. on a winter evening, with the sun setting on the horizon, when my first journey as a railway guard began. In those days, the railway had very few diesel engines, and these were reserved for the main line, the Karachi to Lahore route. On other routes, coal-powered steam engines pulled the trains. Consequently, this train also had a steam engine that ran on coal, and its speed wasn't particularly high. Although I had traveled this railway line to Rawalpindi several times before, this was my first time going that way as a railway official. This journey marked the beginning of my career, and my future success depended entirely on how well I performed. Therefore, I was carrying out my duties with complete alertness and responsibility. At 10 p.m., the train arrived at Lair. This district railway station was beautiful and considered an important station on this line. The train had to stop here for quite some time, so I sat down in the railway restaurant at the station and had dinner. I was just swallowing my last morsel when suddenly I noticed a young and stunningly beautiful girl approaching me. She was wearing a black silk burqa, but the veil was lifted from her face. I couldn't help but be startled by her approach. This fair-complexioned girl with delicate features carried a small bag in one hand. Perhaps she too was traveling on the same train and had come to the restaurant to eat or have tea. Perhaps she wanted to ask me how long the train would be stopped, but my assumption proved wrong. The tall, attractive girl came right up to my table. I looked at her with questioning eyes, and her beautiful, luscious pink lips held a playful smile. Her gazelle-like eyes sparkled with youth, and her cheeks glowed with a rosy blush. "May I sit here, sir?" she asked softly. Her voice was as charming as her face, with an incredibly sweet tone. "Why not? Please sit," I said, captivated by her enchanting beauty. She thanked me and sat down in the chair opposite me, placing her bag on the floor beside the chair. "Yes, how may I help you? Do you need something?" I asked her. "Yes, I learned you were having dinner, so I came over," she said with a smile. "By the way, my name is Niloufar, and I am a school teacher here in Lair." I estimated she was no more than 22 years old. Throughout our conversation, her gaze remained fixed on my face. "It's a pleasure to meet you," I said, smiling politely. "Would you like me to order tea or food for you?" "Thank you. I think it's time for you to leave, so perhaps another time," she said with a smile. "We'll be meeting daily now anyway." The guard who was on this train before you was very kind to me and used to call me daughter. I always traveled in his compartment. When he didn't come today, I was extremely worried, not knowing whether you would agree to take me along or not. "Why not?" "Of course, I'll take you," I said, nodding in response. "You're in the ladies' compartment, aren't you?" No, she said, quickly cutting me off. "If I were traveling in the ladies' compartment, I would have bought a ticket. I'll sit in your room. You don't have any objection, do you?" With that, she looked into my eyes, and as our gazes met, I felt as if some magnetic wave was emanating from her eyes and gripping my mind. To escape this sensation, I immediately looked away and began thinking about how it could possibly be appropriate for this girl to travel in my room. The previous guard was a middle-aged old man who, according to Niloufar, called her daughter. But I was young, and Niloufar was a complete stranger to me. Moreover, it was nighttime. What if Satan tempted me in our solitude? Or even if I did nothing wrong, I could still be defamed, and such defamation would prove disastrous for my future. After thinking for a few seconds, I replied, "No, Niloufar, it would be completely inappropriate for you to travel with me in my room. There's a risk of scandal for both you and me. Don't worry, nothing like that will happen," Niloufar said with a smile. "Everyone knows I always travel in the guard's room. Nothing untoward has ever happened. You need to understand, Niloufar, the previous guard was an old man," I said softly. "So what? Don't you have confidence in yourself?" she said with a laugh, her tone slightly mocking. Hearing this, my mind reeled, and I began to feel angry at my own cowardice and lack of composure. "All right, Miss Niloufar, let's go," I said in a decisive tone and stood up from my chair. She also rose and walked with me out of the dining room onto the platform. Once on the platform, I blew my whistle, and the passengers standing outside began boarding the train. "Please get into my room, miss," I told her, and she moved toward the train. My designated guard's room was just a few steps away. I watched her board my room and then moved in that direction myself. Standing in the doorway, I gave the engine driver the green light signal, and the train began to move, slowly crawling forward. After leaving the station's boundary, I stepped back and closed the door, then turned to look at her. But I was astonished. Her journey from here was only 5 minutes. Yet she had removed her burqa and was reclining on my seat in a most alluring manner. It seemed as if she planned to travel for a long time. I was surprised to see that despite the cold, she wore a fine white lawn suit, and underneath she hadn't worn any additional clothing, so her pink skin was clearly visible through the fabric. She was looking at me with an enchanting smile. Since she was lying on the berth, I sat on the seat near her head, and I could clearly see the splendor of her beauty. Her devastatingly gorgeous figure was before me in a provocative manner, and I was, after all, a young man. Her proximity made my blood flow faster, and I was trying to maintain control over myself. "Nasir Saab, please talk about something so time can pass," she suddenly said, lifting her gaze to look at me. "What should I talk about, miss? You only have 3 or 4 minutes to spend." "Then your stop will come," I said, startled from my absorption. I was puzzled about how she knew my name. No one at Lair railway station knew me, and only the station master knew my name. It wasn't possible that she had learned my name from the station master. "These 3 or 4 minutes can turn into hours, you know," Niloufar said with a meaningful smile, looking into my eyes. As our eyes met, a tingling sensation began spreading through my mind. It felt as if some invisible magnetic wave was emanating from her eyes and penetrating my skull. In this state, for a few moments, I became completely oblivious to my surroundings. Then the train's whistle suddenly startled me, and I seemed to regain my senses. I looked away from her eyes to her lips, where an inviting smile was dancing on her pink lips. I don't understand, Miss Niloufar," I said in a confused tone, suddenly remembering her answer. "I need to get off at the signal just before the next station," she said, lying on her right side and propping her head up on her elbow while looking at me. "There's a shortcut to my house just a few steps from there, so I don't go to the station. I get off right at the signal and go home. But to get home from the station, I have to walk about 1 kilometer. If you'll permit me, I'll get off there for a minute to inform my family, and then spend a few hours with you. Then in the morning, I return to Lair for my duty. What do you think?" Her proposition and the plan to spend several hours with me made my heartbeat suddenly race. She wanted to stay with me until morning, and her seductive reclining posture indicated what she intended to do during that extended time. "What need is there for my permission? If it's your wish, I have no objection," I said with a smile. "The desire is strong. Nothing happens in this world without desire. Now, Nasir Saab," she said, placing her other hand on mine. "I don't understand, Miss Niloufar," I said anxiously, feeling the softness and smoothness of her hand. "Look, when a person desires food, they eat, right? Without hunger, even the best food cannot be eaten. Similarly, it's human nature to satisfy not just stomach hunger, but every kind of craving and hunger," she said in a meaningful tone. "Really? Is there hunger besides stomach hunger?" I asked in surprise. "Of course, just like the stomach, every organ of the human body experiences hunger. The hunger of the eyes, the hunger of the heart, the hunger of the body, and so on," she said, and at the same time, she lifted her hand and ran it across my chest, looking at me with an intoxicated expression. Understanding her meaning, I felt as if ants were crawling all over my body. My heartbeat quickened. I was about to respond when, at that very moment, the train whistled and began to slow down. I looked at the watch on my wrist. The next stop was surely approaching. I stuck my head out the window and saw the signal bridge of the next station in the light from the engine, still about 400 or 500 yards away. But the signal hadn't been lowered yet, which was why the driver had applied the brakes and the train's speed was decreasing. "The signal isn't down yet. Do you want to get off?" I asked, turning to Niloufar. "Yes, dear," she said casually as she got up. "And you need to get off too." "Oh, how is that possible? How can the train leave without me?" I said, startled. "The train will stay stopped at the signal until we return. The signal never gets lowered before 5 minutes," she said with a smile. "What?" I said in amazement. "How do you know?" "Experience," she said with a laugh. "I come every day and observe it. Don't worry, we'll just go inform my family within 3 minutes and come right back." The train's speed continued to decrease, and then it stopped just a few steps before the signal. Since I was traveling on this train for the first time, and Niloufar came here on this same train every day, I believe the train would stop here for 5 minutes.
Where is your house?
I asked her, and she pointed outside with her hand.
I looked in that direction and saw dense trees running parallel to the railway line for quite a distance.
They were close to the line, and the lights from the train's bogies reached those trees.
But beyond the trees, there was only darkness. Oh, that's a forest.
There's no settlement over there, I said in surprise. Just come with me, dear, she said casually, taking my hand. This area doesn't have electricity, which is why you can't see any settlement. Beyond these trees are houses. The touch of her hand sent a current through my body, and I involuntarily opened the door and stepped down.
My hand was in her soft, delicate hand.
It was quite cold outside the train, but Niloufar's proximity was warming me.
Holding my hand, she began walking toward the trees. Coming to the other side of the trees, I saw we were in a mango orchard that seemed to stretch endlessly.
Beyond this orchard is the settlement, she said, moving forward in the darkness, and she came so close to me that her side touched my body. Her nearness brought a kind of passion over me, and it didn't even occur to me that her burqa and bag had been left behind in the train.
I involuntarily put my arm around her waist. "No, dear," she said quickly, reading my intentions.
"Not here. Be patient. Your beauty has robbed me of all patience," I said in a tone filled with emotion. "All right, my darling. Just let me get home first," she said with a laugh, slipping out of my embrace. The darkness combined with my emotional state meant I had no idea how much distance we had covered in her proximity. Then I saw the flickering light of a lamp ahead. "That light is burning in my house," she said, stopping.
"You wait here for a moment. I'll go inform my family."
"If needed, I'll call you. Come back quickly."
"There's very little time," I said impatiently.
"The train might get delayed. Don't worry, dear. The train will wait for us," she said, squeezing my hand in the darkness.
Then she released my hand, and I saw her silhouette fading into the darkness. Now I stood in the dark, thinking that it would have been better if I had brought a torch or signal light with me.
Time passed moment by moment, and my impatience grew.
About a minute later, I heard a voice ahead. "Come straight, Nasir." It was Niloufar's voice. Hearing her call, I began moving forward cautiously. I was heading toward the lamp, walking in its direction. But then suddenly, upon hearing a sound, my steps halted.
The sound had come from behind me. It seemed as if two people were whispering to each other.
I stopped and turned to look back, but saw nothing behind me.
In the darkness, nothing beyond his steps was visible.
Suddenly, Niloufar's words echoed in my mind that the train would wait for us. And I began thinking about how it could possibly be that the train would remain stopped until my return. I dismissed the sound I'd heard as my imagination and started moving forward again. But as soon as I took a step, those same mysterious whispers began again. And this time I became frightened. While walking, I once again turned my face to look back. But this time too, I didn't see the whispering people.
The fear gripping my mind intensified, and I began moving forward more quickly. The mango orchard seemed endlessly long.
Perhaps I had covered 100 or 150 steps, but the lamp burning in Niloufar's house still appeared to be at the same distance as before.
This time, instead of stopping, the whispers continuously followed me, and I was moving forward with trembling steps.
My heartbeat was racing. Now, I couldn't even hear the sound of the train's engine. Then suddenly, the whispers emerging from behind me became very loud, though their words still weren't clear to me.
It felt as if the whisperers were getting closer to me. My fear and anxiety increased further, and I began to quicken my pace as well.
I didn't know who those invisible people were and why they were following me.
After a few moments, I reached close to the lamp. Here, the trees had ended, and for quite a distance, small and large bushes spread out.
Ahead, I could see a well.
On the well was a wooden pulley with a rope for drawing water wrapped around it, while the lamp was burning on the well's rim. Approaching the well, I received a shock of surprise. I surveyed the surroundings with frightened eyes, but didn't see any living soul there. However, on the left side, in the starlight, I could make out the traces of some high and low graves.
Perhaps there was a graveyard there. I began thinking about Niloufar, where she had gone and where her house was, when she had said the lamp was burning in her house.
But there was only a well here. The long grass and reeds near the well suggested that the well was not in use and had been abandoned for quite some time.
When I arrived there, the whispers of the invisible people had stopped. I began moving toward the trees of the orchard that spread behind me.
Nasir, come on. Why have you stopped?
Suddenly I heard Nilofar's voice. I quickly turned toward the sound and jumped in surprise.
She was sitting on the well's rim, looking at me.
Her long hair was blowing in the wind, and when I moved toward her, she stood up.
What are you doing here? Where is your house?
I asked Nilofar as I approached.
Come, I'll show you my house, she said affectionately, taking my hand. And I began to feel a tingling sensation in my body from her touch.
No, it's already quite late, I said quickly. Don't worry, dear.
Your train can't leave without you, she said, laughing as she looked at me.
Nilofar's eyes were gleaming even in the darkness. I looked at her, and as our eyes met, I felt as if invisible magnetic waves were gripping my mind.
Then soon, my consciousness became empty of all sensations. Follow me, she said, releasing my hand, her tone quite commanding. With that, she turned and climbed onto the well's rim. Without thinking, like someone under hypnosis, I began to follow her, climbing onto the rim. She stepped into the well and began descending.
I climbed onto the rim and looked into the well, where in the lamp's light I could see stairs leading down inside the well. Nilofar began descending the stairs, so I started following her. There was darkness at the bottom of the well, so I couldn't see its depth, nor could I estimate how deep it was. I was descending the stairs behind Nilofar in an enchanted manner.
She was 2 stairs ahead of me, and the light from the lamp on the rim fell on her back, and through her pink shirt, her pink skin was visible. Descend carefully. After descending 4 or 5 stairs, she turned her face to look at me and said this. I looked at her, but as soon as I saw her face in the lamp's light, my frozen senses suddenly sprang to life, and the intensity of fear caused me to begin trembling violently. That face didn't belong to the beautiful Nilofar who had expressed her desire for me in the train. Rather, it was the face of some aged, crone-like woman. Her eyes were large and extremely frightening. Her nose was curved and long like a parrot's beak, while her lips were ugly and hung down to her chin. Seeing that horrifying face, I screamed in terror and my steps faltered. In the next moment, I tilted to the left on the stairs and fell like a lifeless stone into the depths, and with that, I lost all consciousness. When I opened my eyes, I was lying at the bottom of the well, and all around me was light. Compared to the opening, the bottom of the well was as spacious as a large room. In it was piled a heap of human skulls and bones, and I was alone there. Seeing those human skulls and skeletons, I understood that I was in a witch's dwelling. The intensity of fear was making my throat dry and my breath difficult. Then I remembered Nilofar's transformed face. Surely she was some bloodthirsty witch who had trapped me in the web of emotions and brought me here. From the skulls and bones lying in the well, I could clearly see my fate. Suddenly, the sound of someone laughing struck my ears. I quickly looked to the left, and the intensity of terror made my hair stand on end. In that corner stood Nilofar, laughing. Her body was free from the constraint of clothes, but instead of a young woman, it was the weak and wrinkled body of some 100-year-old crone, and bones were visible through the thin skin. Her fingernails were 1.5 inches long, and her feet were bent backward. When she laughed, long and sharp teeth were visible inside her mouth. Her terrifying eyes were turning red, and she was looking at me with bloodthirsty eyes. Nasir, dear, I'm terribly thirsty. What should I do? Nilofar suddenly addressed me. Drink water. A choked voice emerged from my mouth due to fear. No, my thirst can only be quenched by your blood, dear, she said with a laugh. I need your warm and fresh blood because you're young, and I always prefer young blood. No. I began whimpering from the intensity of terror. Don't be afraid, my love, she said, moving toward me. A little while ago in the orchard, you tried to quench your heart's thirst from my body. Then you didn't feel fear. So why are you frightened of me now? You're a witch, I said with difficulty and began backing away. Very good. Now you see me as a witch, she said with mocking laughter. In the train, you were besotted with me. You were feasting your eyes on my body's beauty. Come, embrace me, beloved. She spread both arms as she advanced toward me, but I said nothing in response. Fear had dried my throat. You cannot leave without quenching my thirst, Nasir. If I don't drink your thick, red blood, I'll die forever, she said, continuing to approach me. I backed up until I was against the well's wall. I'd been living on fresh and warm blood for 100 years. Nasir, dear, she said without stopping and came very close to me. I was trembling against the wall in terror, and a horrifying death was dancing before my eyes. There seemed no way to escape from this witch. She stopped in front of me, and extended both her sharp-nailed hands toward my neck, so as a last resort, I suddenly kicked her in the stomach, but immediately, pain made me cry out. My foot had struck a tree trunk, and I had stumbled. I managed to steady myself with difficulty and looked around. The environment had changed.
I was standing in the orchard at the same spot where Niloufar had left me to go to her house. At that very moment, I heard the train's whistle, so I turned in panic and began running toward the railway line. Emerging from the orchard, I reached near the railway line and saw the signal had been lowered, and the train had begun moving, crawling slowly. I immediately ran toward the crawling train and boarded the guard's room, sitting on my seat while panting.
The train's speed increased, and the next station began approaching. I was thinking about whether what had happened to me was reality or a dream. I looked toward the berth and was astonished. Neither Niloufar's burqa nor her bag was visible there, but I was certain I hadn't been dreaming. Indeed, a witch in the form of Niloufar had tried to hunt me. The previous guard, being a middle-aged old man, meant the witch never appeared before him.
And because that witch was addicted to drinking only young blood, she had trapped me in the stare of her beauty and youth and, through deception, had taken me into the orchard trees.
But I had thwarted her attempt by attacking her.
Consider for yourself whether I had seen a dream or had truly escaped by a hair's breadth from becoming a witch's victim.
In any case, I became so terrified by this incident that by the time I reached my destination, I had developed a high fever. The next day, I returned to Multan with the train and took sick leave from the office. On the third day, when my health recovered, I got my duty transferred on my father's recommendation and instead of the Thal Express, began performing duties as a guard on the Tesra Express that ran on the main line.
But that terrifying incident remains in my memory to this day.